Hello, lovies. It's me again. We have a Canadian edition of another one, my third Canadian that I've interviewed. Wow. Um, this in the last few weeks. And so Samantha is an advocate and a Facebook friend of mine. And when I started all of this, I reached out to her because I absolutely love the work that she does. She inspires me so much, and I really hope to be able to bring some of that advocacy and energy to our chapter here in Mississippi as well as the United States. So thank you so much, Samantha, for joining me and agreeing to do this. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
That's a nice welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me too. A little bit about me. So I am president of Little People of Manitoba. So we are a provincial organization here for little people in Canada, and Manitoba is the province. I've been the president since about 2015, and we've been lobbying and advocating for some significant change up here in Canada. So first of all, in 2014, we worked with our local government and unanimously was approved for a private members bill for to have Manitoba recognize October 25th of every year as Dwarfism Awareness Day. And then that day kind of catapulted us into, some further advocacy that we had wanted to do with some of the sports organizations up here, where we had wanted to really remove the term midget, as we know, which is highly offensive. Remove the term midget from sports organizations that were still using it, to classify age groups for kids, and it was all sorts of wrong. So we worked with the organizations up here to remove that, starting with basketball and hockey in Manitoba. And then ultimately, we worked with Hockey Canada as well as some folks over in Ontario. We worked with Hockey Canada, and ultimately Hockey Canada removed the term midget from hockey in Canada. So that's a little bit about my advocacy. In my day job, I work in human resources for a large manufacturing company here in Winnipeg, with a global presence. So I'm their HR advisor and accessibility manager. Most importantly, I'm a mom to a 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old, going on 30-year-old, and he's the coolest kid you've ever met, way cooler than I'll ever be. And I have a wonderful partner, my husband Ryan, and so I'm also a dog mama, and that's a little bit about me. I grew up as the only LP in my family. I have my parents were average size, or are average size, and I think I had the gold standard of parents. I had a really privileged, lucky life, or childhood, I should say. And I was never allowed to play the victim. I was never allowed to say I couldn't do it because of my size. Um, and they really instilled a level of confidence that they really tried to protect, to ensure that I could be anything I wanted to be, and really believed that.
That's awesome. I see that it seems like it kind of goes one way or the other when you have average height parents. You either have the unsure, overprotective, which I get, or you have the well, you can do it. There's no reason I can do it. You
Yeah.
can do it. So that's awesome. I'm sure that had some help in getting you to the very strong voiced advocate that you are today.
Yeah, I mean, if you could meet my mom, she's like the toughest lady you've ever met. And like a real mama bear. And still to this day, at 38 years old, she's still like a mama bear to me. But I wouldn't have it any other way. She's tough as nails, doesn't take like nothing from anybody. She is like a boss lady.
Mhm.
And so I was very, very lucky, very lucky.
That's awesome. Did you guys get involved in I was about to say LPA and Little People Canada when you were young?
Yeah, actually both. So I was involved with they joined Little People of Manitoba when I was 4, I believe, or two or four. I'm getting those dates wrong. And then they joined Little People of America when I was 4 for sure. And I've been participating in Little People of America since then. They made that our family trip every summer. They made sure that you know, even to this, even as of a couple years ago, my parents were still coming because they wanted to share the experience with my son as well. But they really made an effort to make Little People of America very much a priority in my life.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, so how did you get into advocacy? Have you always been stand up for what's right, you know, loud and proud kind of gal, or is it something you kind of got into later as you grew up?
I think I got into it as I grew up. I was never thought I'd be in advocacy. Um, I didn't even ever think I'd be part of the Little People of Manitoba, like, leadership executive board. And I just kind of got into it. Somebody had asked me to come join and come back and be a part of it. And then just one thing led to another. And then just kind of doing that and I was really uncomfortable with it. Like when I was first elected in 2015, just being so out of my comfort zone, and actually just the vulnerability that comes with it was tough. But you know, my whole goal in life, and I think the legacy that I want to leave, is I want the next generation of LPs, or my son, or the kids that are coming up, just to be okay, like to love who they are, to be
Mhm.
so confident in their own skin and love their bodies, and just, you know, own it. And I want those kids, or that next generation, to be able to do anything they want to do, anything they want to do, anything that they dream of, and their size has no factor in that.
Mhm.
Right? So I want society to see them for who they are, as wonderful as they are, and really, like, size to not even be a factor. And so, you know, when I that's kind of when, you know, when I was uncomfortable, or uncomfortable with being vulnerable, that always had to be in the back of my head. And then as things, you know, momentum started to build, and I started to kind of find my own voice, and really figure out what I stood for and what I didn't stand for, then it became really kind of like second nature and fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. What does your son think of you being, you know, the advocate, the voice?
I think he thinks it's cool. Well, he did. I don't know if he thinks it's so cool anymore. You know, a lot of his friends try and follow me on Instagram, and he hates that. Um, so, you know, I think he thought it was cool at one point, but I'm not sure I'm so cool anymore.
Yeah, well, he's a teen, so nothing is cool from
Cool.
what I understand. I don't have one yet, but we're getting there. Like the beginnings are, you know, I can already feel the tude. And my oldest, she's not like a sassy, like smart mouth kind of girl normally, but it's seeping in and I'm like, "Oh, here come them hormones."
It's like this monster comes out that you didn't like. You're like, where did this come? Where's my sweet child?
Yeah. Yeah, and then my 6-year-old, she already has that, and so
I saw your pages. There's, he's got sass.
rude. Yeah.
Watch out for your teenage years.
I know. We'll make it.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
um, so it's interesting that the phrase midget has you know there's it's obviously a terrible word to
Yeah.
use, but before we being just little people in general, finally said, you know, look, that's enough, just stop. It was intended to mean like small, which is the definition. So it's really interesting that it applied that Canada used it as a term for like little league or whatever. Did you How hard was that how hard were those conversations to have? Did people immediately like understand, like, yeah, we get it, you're right, this is not cool, or was there like, no, like for real, this is not cool?
So you know what? It was a little bit of both. We met with there was about 16 people that represented the different sports organizations in the province in this when we had one giant meeting. And I really come to the table each and every time thinking that people just don't know, that it's not an intentional, I'm trying to hurt your feelings, or I'm trying to be a jerk, that it's like I really just don't know. And so I really believe that if I come to the table and share the facts with you, then you're going to get it. You're going to be a little bit reasonable, or a lot reasonable. And so that's exactly what happened. So we went to the table. we presented the whys. The term midget is derived from the word midge. And what midge means is tiny fly that spreads disease. And who wants to be called that? How terrible is that? Right? Like, not even all the stuff to do, like all the history with the freak shows and the vaudeville days and where that word comes from, but just even the word itself. How awful is that?
Right.
So we came from that place, and immediately in that meeting, basketball was the first one that stood up in that meeting and said, we're done, we're not using this word. And then football, and then hockey came around. Hockey was, to be honest, was a little bit more difficult to convince, and it was more of the, well, we don't mean it this way, we've used it for this long, so like, really, what's the big deal? And then eventually they came around, I think. So it wasn't tough per se. It was just a little bit more, some were really easy and turned it around real quick, and others just need a little bit more prodding.
I love your approach, though, and that's typically how I approach it when someone just says it in general contact and conversation, because a lot of people don't know, but also it's a really good tactic to diffusing a situation if you come at it from that angle. So that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, it's also good for me to come from that angle, because there's a lot of anger that we can have, and there's a lot of pent up emotions that we can have. So if we're walking around, or if I'm walking around going, that person's a jerk, that person's doing it intentionally, that person's an ass, like, that's going to do a terrible thing on my mental health. So I'm choosing to think, okay, I just need to educate, and I just need to share some knowledge. Plus, I know that eyes are on me with the next generation. I know that my son is watching how I think and how I approach life and how I, share arguments and all that. So that's the lesson I want to teach him as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's so true. Excuse me. So, crap, I lost my thought when I cleared my throat. Oh my goodness.
All right.
So LPA. So, did you stay involved? You didn't have any lapses or anything?
No, I did. I missed like 1 year, but I never lapsed in terms of like just stopped talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So LPA, I can't say enough about that organization. It is so near and dear to my heart. My best friend in the world, we've been best friends for 30 years. We met at an LPA conference when we were 8. It is just, I always say, I go to that week, and I'll do everything. I'll move heaven and earth to get to that, that week in July. And I always say that week is like my food for the soul week. That just gets me through the full year. Like, it's that week where I can just be with my people, right? And I'm not looking at butts all the time. And I, you know what I mean? Like, it's just this wonderful week that it's like a big hug. So I've been involved with LPA right since I was a young child.
That's awesome. So I just
involved as well. Like, sorry, I got my son involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Does he enjoy it and make connections and such too?
Yeah. He loves it, and he's got friends. And technology is so different than when we were growing up. So when I was growing up, my friend and I, we had to watch the phone bills, and we were only allowed to talk once a month, and had to be, very timed, because it would be, this whole expensive thing.
Yeah.
But now with iPhones and FaceTime, and they can play video games together, what a difference.
I know, it is crazy how that has changed. That's really neat though, because especially with you guys being like international.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just got involved last year for the first time, and I went to 3 regionals last year, and I got to take the kids to 2 of them, and it was just incredible. Like, and to see them, the girls especially, see other kids like them, and I mean, it's just, there really aren't words. When we went to Fort Lauderdale for the first one, and we pulled up to the hotel, and you pull up front, and then you get out to check in or whatever, and then you go park. So we pulled up front, and we were getting ready to get out, and my oldest, she says, "Mom, there's a boy." And and she's not boy crazy, so like that's not like, she still is in the boys are gross phase. And so I was like, what? And she was like, there's a boy. And it took me a minute to realize that she meant an LP boy, that she had never seen a male LP before. And I was like, oh my God, it just really hit me how impactful the trip was going to be. And Malika got to see other, kids her size, and she's at that age where she's really trying to figure out, like, wait a minute, so I'm not going to be tall. Like,
Right, right.
it's interesting, especially how different she is from her sister. Her sister, I feel like her sister's always known. She just seems, we never really had those like discussions or anything. She just has always known, whereas Malika is basically in denial about it. So, we're getting through it.
Yeah, you know what? My son, I think he was 4. I want to say he was around 4. It was probably his first convention where he kind of understood, and he was freaked out. He wanted to stay in the hotel room the whole time.
Overwhelming.
Which is interesting because, he knew me. I've been his mom his whole life, and we've been around other people, but it wasn't to that, like, that size. So that was really quite an eye-opener for me. The other thing is, when he was growing up, when started going to school, I think he thought all moms were going to be little, because he'd only had me as his, barometer. And so he went to school, and these other moms were there, and they were average size. And he was like asking these kids, like, who are those people? Like, where's your mom? And it was like, oh, I guess I got to do some teaching here.
That is precious, though. Oh my goodness.
But I was like, oh, okay.
Oh man, just the innocence. It's so funny. Oh, I was at a restaurant yesterday, and I was leaving, or it was a deli. I went to get to go, and this guy and his dad were there, and I could hear the little boy. He had to be maybe like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I could hear him, like, saying something, and the dad was like, and so I was like, hey, how are you? And we started talking, and then by the time we got done talking, the kid was like, like, she's
so cool.
yeah. So it's just funny how kids are. They're just so
precious.
Yes, innocent, precious. Yeah. So so LPA is really, I would love to, I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this question. So we don't have the whole like midget, little league thing here, but I just really feel like there's awareness is such an interesting phrase, because like we exist, and people know we exist. And so I've started seeing people use the phrases acceptance instead of awareness. And I thought that was interesting. What's your thought on that?
So my preference is pride. I know a lot of the LPs is dwarf pride, and I love that. The awareness thing I get. So it's interesting because there's a lot of debates, and everybody has an opinion on it. And so, the awareness thing, everybody knows who we are. We're aware, we've got it, right? Why do people have to be more aware of who we are? But I think it comes from a more educational piece, and I think we have to look at it like that, meaning not everybody, I think the awareness really means education, but I really prefer the dwarf pride, or dwarf, when they're talking, a lot of people will say, well, it's dwarf pride month or dwarf pride day. And I love that, because to me, that just speaks of like a body positivity, so comfortable in who you are, just so prideful. And I love that.
I love that. I think that is perfect. I love that. I am going to use that next year. I love that. Well, I'll use it moving forward, but I'm definitely going to use it next year. I love that. What do you have anything on your radar that you feel really needs a lot of attention right now, as far as like for instance, the whole midget thing? Is there something else that you think needs to be targeted on a grander scale like that?
No, I think right now we have to just, I think in our community, there's a lot of divide right now on, with people of color. really the whole privilege aspect of LPA, to be honest. And so I think we need to mend some broken fences and really take a look at our own community and see how we can really become more inclusive to folks that have generally been marginalized even within our own community. So I think as a greater community, we need to spend some time looking at that. And some of that time needs to be spent looking at ourselves within ourselves and seeing the privilege that we've had and going, okay, what can I do to fix this? What can I do to help? And really, working on our own community and fixing that a little bit.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think I I just got involved, like I said, just got involved last year, but we just started a chapter in Mississippi, which, well, we haven't had elections yet, but but I'm just super excited about it. It's the first one in decades and in Mississippi. And there's not a large population of LPs in Mississippi that I'm aware of. I mean, obviously, but again, that kind of feeds into the privilege thing, because we only know the others that we either see or who are part of LPA. And we have such a rural state. Like, I live on the coast, and it's kind of I mean, it's not a city, but it's more metro for sure than most of the state. And so that definitely feeds into the privilege. And then also, we definitely have a very large, excuse me, BIPOC community. And so a lot of people of color in the state. And so that, I love that. I absolutely love that. I will be reaching out to you.
Good, please. Yeah.
Yeah. I really I want to affect change. I don't want it to just be like, like we did a Halloween Zoom meeting, we're doing a Thanksgiving, and that's fun and great, but I want it to be more.
No, I totally hear you. And I think I am such a advocate for our allies. We need our allies out there rooting for us. And how do you get allies? You get allies by going out into the community and teaching and sharing your information and your knowledge. So I think that's how you do more. You really, spread your word, spread your truth, and get your allies involved so that they can take it even further and share their influence with others.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That is so awesome. So, is there anything else about advocacy that we haven't covered, or anything in that realm that you want to chat about?
I think what I would say is that, it's not always sunshine and roses and lollipops, right? It's hard work, and it doesn't always go your way. And there's a lot of times where I've advocated for something and it hasn't gone the way I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard. It's really tough sometimes, and you can get in your own head, and you can, make yourself feel bad, or you can let the outside influences, the people telling you that you're this word or that word and you shouldn't try and change. You can let all that get to you, but I think you have to figure out a way to persevere and to have grit and to really just get through the hard stuff, because on the other side it's always good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think finding, if you're going to be an advocate, I think it's finding your way to, put up those walls sometimes, and persevere through and just get through that mud and get through that hard stuff so that you can get to the other side. But it's always good on the other side.
Oh, that's good stuff. Thank you. That's awesome. So I close out my calls with the question of, what is the most ridiculous or absurd or funny thing that has ever been said or done because you're an LP?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, so I have a lot. I was going to write a book. So I used to, when I started like 16 years old, I started as a greeter at Walmart. And so I had like the most ridiculous things happen. But I think, so I've had a couple weird things. I'll talk about weird. I'll do one weird and one funny. But weird was, I had this customer like legit make me this present. and it was all this like he cut all these pictures out of magazines, and they were all pictures of mannequins. Weird. And then put it in like this bag that was like with a mannequin drawn on, and like and told him and gave it to me. Said it was just for me and that I was his mannequin, and it was like bizarre land. Uh, but I think funny again. I'll go back to Walmart. You know, people for some reason, and again, this is something that is talked about in our community, and some people like it, some people don't. But people always want to talk to us on their knees. Average height people want to come down to our level and talk, right? Sometimes. And so I had this customer come to me and ask for the dog food. And he was an older gentleman, and he went down to his knees, except he couldn't get back up after. And there was no way I was going to be able to help him up because I was laughing too hard. The strength. So he had to like kneel walk to the product and like stand. It was awesome. Like it was all sorts of amazing. And it was so funny that I was telling my manager, my friends who were also in management there, and they were just watching it on the security camera after and just dying, like just laughing and laughing. It was too good. It was too good.
Oh my God. Oh man, that's wow. Oh,
God,
good
it's awesome.
content. Today I was leaving Walmart and I was walking towards the door, and with masks, you know, it complicates everything. Yeah. And this lady in scrubs was walking out too, and she stopped and she waved at me, and I didn't recognize her, and I just kind of, you know, did the and
Yeah.
and then as I got closer, I was like, oh hey, I actually knew her. And she was like, do you think I'm just like waving at people? And I said, do I think people just wave at me? And she was like, all right. And I had my sunglasses on my head, and when I like went to hug her, and my sunglasses fell off, and I bent down to pick them up, and we're right at the exit. Somebody's walking in, and I was picking them up, and somebody stopped on the way in. Are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yes. And I said, Sasha, like that literally like just proves my entire point. And she was like, I don't think about you being little. I forgot. And I was like, I'm just saying.
That's really funny.
It's just like,
but yeah, we could write books. Like we have so many good stories.
we could. Oh man. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. This is fantastic. And I will definitely be in touch with you because I would love to.
Please.
Yeah. And I really hope I do not have my I'm not optimistic about Baltimore next year, but hopefully 2022 we can meet at
nationals. I hope so. You got to get there. It's nothing you've ever experienced before. You got to.
This year was Austin, which is 8 hours from us. And so we were like gung ho, ready to go. And then, you know, but I'm glad they made the decision, but it was still a bummer, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if Baltimore will happen. I don't know. Like, it'll just depend on the pandemic.
Yeah, we'll see. Even, I don't know, you know, even if it does, I don't know that it's so far away. But the West Coast, I have friends over there, so it would make it worth it for West Coast. So, but either way, the next one, I definitely hope that we get to meet.
Absolutely. And I want to help you with anything, and we'll partner on some stuff for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Have a good night. Bye, y'all.